First time I saw it was at the producer's house. And they wanted me to get on a FaceTime call right after it was done with the director in Los Angeles and with Ray Harris, the guy who put up the primary financial, and asked me if I would respond to the movie almost in the moment. And I was like, fuck you. Fortunately, Renee had a pretty good-sized backyard, and I went for a walk, because I just was devastated, not because of the film, but because of the memories and the emotions of it.
Welcome to Pancom Podcast. On January 15th, we did a live viewing of...
It was called Love Charlie, The Rise and Fall of Chef Charlie Trotter.
Love Charlie. It was the first time we did any kind of event like that. I thought it was a very beautiful experience from top to bottom. I thought we were really honoring a chef that deserves all the accolades in the world and someone that was a trailblazer in our industry. And we had an opportunity to do a Q&A with Chef Norman that was a huge part of the documentary process afterwards. I thought, something that really struck me in that whole process was there were people that were very familiar with Chef Charlie. There was people that were not super familiar. For me personally, it was a very personal dining experience.
Back up a little bit.
Strictly because Charlie Trotter's food had such an impact on me when I was a young cook. And not only an impact from the food that he did, but the people that he surrounded himself with. The other chefs that worked in his kitchens and the chefs that he called friends. One of which has been my mentor for the entirety of my career pretty much. And, we did a menu that I thought was approachable, but still very much Charlie Trotter, and it was a lot of pressure. We actually, it was the first time that we've done an event that we involved chefs from all over the company. The chef at Laurel did a course, the chef from Ariete did a course, the chef from Nave did a course, and our corporate chef did a course. And, I only did that because I thought, in my mind, I wanted them to focus 100% on that dish that they were doing, not 4 dishes at the same time. Because, it is a lot of pressure to say that you're doing Charlie Trotter-esque food. You can never replicate the food that Charlie Trotter did. But to even have like that kind of feel and that kind of approach, and it was a lot of pressure. For me personally, and I think that once I talked to my chefs and I talked to them a little bit about it, they also felt the pressure too. So, we actually partnered with Sipsmith Gin on this event. I thought it was an incredible collaboration. They did a great job of performing as partners in this event, and they paired cocktails with every single course that we did, and the cocktails were put together by Andrew McCutcheon, which is general manager of Ariete. So we started with a welcome cocktail of a slow gin fizz, Sipsmith Gin with lime and San Pellegrino, super simple, something to open up your palate and get you ready to go. The fennel salad was really kind of like an homage to what's in season in South Florida. So we did fennel from Bee Heaven Farms, mustard vinaigrette, Marcona almonds, Asian pear. The Asian pear was also put into like a broken vinaigrette with sherry vinegar that was kind of like ornately put around the greens and the fennel that was on the plate. Again, all local, and it's something that, when I started reading Charlie's work very early in my life, it was something that he talked about a lot, which is, the best product at the best time every year. That course was paired with Army and Navy, which was, again, gin, lemon, orgeat, and bitters. The second course, which was actually my favorite course, which was a salmon terrine. It was smoked salmon that was layered with it's almost like a bay leaf. It was a bay leaf garlic butter in between each layer. The bay leaf garlic butter is actually part of our bread service at Laurel. and it was served with a carrot carambola gastrique with red peppers. The carrot and carambola both came from Bee Heaven, and we juiced them, reduced them down, added a little bit of vinegar at the end, and then the red peppers we just steamed lightly and then added it. So it was almost like, again, a broken vinaigrette with juice and so on and so forth. That was paired with the Gibson. A Gibson is a very simple cocktail: gin, dry vermouth, pickled onion. It is actually the cocktail that the Gibson Room is named after, also the guitar. And then for the third course, we did braised bison short rib with a root vegetable pave and a parsnip puree. This dish was inspired off of a chapter that he had in one of his books that was just based off of root vegetables. The root vegetable was like the main ingredient, and then whatever protein was aligned with that was actually secondary. So the root vegetable pave was rutabagas from Bee Heaven Farms. Also, the parsnips were not, but the root vegetable pave was basically the star of that. The bison was a good assistant to really like showcase what a root vegetable pave should be like. That was paired with a Martinez, which is, again, Sipsmith gin, sweet vermouth, maraschino, and orange. And then for the final course, we did the Gibson flan, which is a foie gras flan with rum drunken figs. And that was served with a gin Alexander, again, gin, cacao, and cream. Super delicious meal. As we were going through the meal and watching the film at the same time, it was something that I took incredibly personal. And I think a lot of people, as the film started to go and the meal started to go, you saw people's, I think, demeanor change, because like the actual film, the documentary, goes from very light, Charlie Trotter is on top of the world, to more of a darker time in his life. And all the way to the end of Trotters, that Trotters was around for 25 years. And it's funny that we did this on January 15th because it was Ariete's 7-year birthday. And, a lot of talk was about the fact that Trotters made it to 25 years, which for a restaurant of that caliber, 25 years is a fucking lifetime. It was a beautiful event. I hope that we did justice to his food. It seemed like Chef Norman was very happy and very proud of the stuff that we did. So I thought it was great. So now you're going to listen to the Q&A of Chef Norman and myself and some other weird curveballs, as we do in Pancom podcast fashion, right after. So
I'll just note, quick shout out to the other sponsors, not just Sipsmith London Gin, but also San Pellegrino, Aquapana, Steelite, and Event Factor, which Event Factor was super clutch.
Well, Event Factor made us look like we were super official.
Exactly, yeah. We had like two guys on the mixer doing the things.
My biggest thing is that they had the whole like separator.
Yeah.
Like it separated them from the crowd, and it looked like we were incredibly official. And I'm like, who the fuck are we right now?
No, it was pretty wild. So if you haven't seen the film, I would you can just continue listening to this now, but I would suggest maybe that you pause the episode, go watch the movie, so that the experience of the episode is like with the context of the film. In the show notes, in the description of this episode, there will be a link to rent or buy the movie on Amazon. And if you use that link, we get a little kickback. So thanks, Jeff Bezos.
He's Cuban.
He's Cuban. Where did he go?
He's like an eighth Cuban.
Is he a Palmetto guy?
I don't remember.
I think he went to Palmetto. So yeah, go do that. There'll be a link down there. You can watch the movie on Amazon and then come do the Q&A, or stick around and, whatever, however you want to do it. But I think that's probably the move. So go do that. And you're back. Okay, great. So here's the Q&A with Mike and Norman Van Aken.
Welcome back.
Thanks to our sponsor, Aganorsa Leaf Cigars.
Aganorsa Leaf is renowned throughout the world for its signature flavor that possesses all the great attributes of Nicaraguan terroir, along with classic Cuban aroma and flavor.
Aganorsa Leaf is pleased to announce a brand new edition of Guardian of the Farm, Cerberus, named after the mythical three-headed hound that stood watch at the gates of Hades. This exciting new Nicaraguan puro uses 100% Aganorsa leaf tobacco and is wrapped in Aganorsa's new Corojo 2012 cover leaf, which adds a level of complexity to the blend. adding light spice and a rich, smooth body to the blend.
When you smoke one of our world-class blends, you will experience the difference between ordinary tobacco and Aganorsa leaf. That's why we say our leaf is our strength. Learn more about Aganorsa leaf and use their store locator and find a cigar shop near you that carries their products at www.aganorsaleaf.com.
The two of us smoke Aganorsa leaf cigars often. We also offer them to a lot of our guests, like, for example, Dave Arvello, who every time I post a picture of a Cerberus mentions to me in my DMs or in a text how cool the band is, which it actually is a pretty slick-looking band. But also, I just want to note, little personal anecdote here, so it's not all totally straight up red. I can say that Michael Beltran will absolutely not only vouch for the quality of Aganorsa cigars, but you met a Miami legend and handed him an Aganorsa cigar.
I did meet a Miami legend. I was smoking nearby Alonzo Mourning, and we had a conversation about cigars, and he handed me one of his, and I went inside. I bought this exact same cigar, and I handed Alonzo Mourning this Aganorsa cigar, and I said, try this. Thank me later.
I mean, if that's not an endorsement, I don't know what is. Aganorsaleaf.com. All right, you've heard us talking about the barrel here on Pan Con Podcast before. It is a sleek barrel-style cooker with loads of capacity that represents a new way to grill. Gets you great results in a fraction of the time that it would take you to cook, let's say, a rack of ribs on an offset smoker.
The legend of the barrel has only gotten greater. They're running around town winning cooking competitions left and right, including taking first place at FIU's North Miami Brewfest for Best Eatery. They're not even an eatery, people.
No, they're not.
I'm not saying they could hang with Nick making omelets in the morning, but it's still pretty impressive. Some South Florida chefs have even started to use the barrel in their restaurants. That's fucking wild. If it's good enough for them, it's good enough for your backyard. Trust me.
You can get yours at barrelthebbq.com. Use promo code PANCON10. That's PANCON10 for 10% off of your purchase. The barrel is a hand-welded barrel-style cooker with a chimney at the center of its base and a rail that runs along the circumference at the top. So you can hang ribs, pork belly, whole chicken, salmon, cheeses, dips, sauces, and all manner of other stuff along the edge.
Whatever you want.
Alternatively, use the grill rack up top to sear meats or grill veggies directly over the coals. Use a pizza stone to cook your favorite pies. The versatility of the barrel is a thing to behold. Mike, you've used the barrel. Tell the people about what you did with it.
Yeah, my favorite thing with the barrel was actually the grill on top. You know, like obviously you can cook all the meats underneath it, but the fact that you can cook, you know, some veggies on the side or, you know, if you want to cook cheese. I didn't use the pizza stone on top, but that's a very interesting idea. I think that the versatility of the product and the fact that you can cook a whole meal in one barrel, you know, makes it pretty versatile.
I mean, a whole bunch of meals. So when I had some people over for one of those fight nights at my
epic
house,
Nick fight nights.
one of those fight nights, and did a lot of chicharrón. So I just lined pretty much the whole edge of the barrel with pork belly and had that be an appetizer thing, and also some ribs.
How did that come out?
Came out great.
Yeah, I
Came
love
out
that.
great. I also had a past guest, Louis Estrada. Chef Louis Estrada was there, was on hand to try the chicharrón that
I
we
love
made.
that.
So
And
yeah,
what was his feedback?
he was a fan. He was familiar with the barrel already.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
Seen that? Chefs all over know about the barrel.
All the way to Brooklyn.
Yeah, all the way to Brooklyn.
Again, Barrel the BBQ, promo code PANCON10 to get 10% off of your order. Tell the people, Barrel the BBQ, PANCON10.
Barrel the BBQ.com.
.com.
Pancon10. That means for
10.
some wild reason you will get 10% off your purchase when you go to buy the barrel
That's right.
for all of your needs.
That's right. And you want to get all the accessories too.
Get all the
All of them.
accessories.
All of them. Good stuff.
Introducing the newest line from Drew Estate Cigars. 20 Acre Farm is a complex, refined, and medium body cigar with a super oaky and cedary notes accompanied by a whisper of white pepper and a bright hint of citrus. Built at La Gran Fabrica, Drew Estate in Nicaragua, using a velvety, and I mean velvety, Ecuadorian Connecticut shade grown wrapper.
Under that wrapper is a sun-grown Habano binder and a filler blend of Nicaraguan tobaccos from Esteli and Jalapa in perfect balance with the opulent and majestic Florida sun-grown leaf. Florida Sun-Grown is also the name of the farm where that tobacco is lovingly grown and harvested by Jeff Borshowitz, who's the guy you see in this video playing behind us, on his pristine 20-acre plot of land near the central Florida town of Claremont. I have actually been to that farm, along with plenty of other cigar tobacco farms in Mexico, Central America, and the Dominican Republic. And what Jeff, who by the way is a very nice guy, there's actually a cigar box signed by Jeff hanging on my wall. What Jeff is doing there is super legit. So it's always cool to see products like his, which is the only premium cigar tobacco grown in Florida, in products from a company like Drew Estate.
Plus, 20-acre farm being a Drew Estate product means it's the creation of master blender and Pan Con podcast guest Willie Herrera. Support our guests and sponsors. Get it online. Ask your local cigar shop about 20-acre farm by Drew Estate. Learn more about Drew Estate and use their store locator to find a cigar shop near you that carries their products at drewestate.com.
That's right. I'm probably going to smoke one of those right now.
What are we waiting for?
Andrew doesn't know how the lights work here yet, so this is going to be real fun.
Andrew knows how I like the lights.
Oh, that's where they're going to be. That's me. That's where they're staying. That's where they're staying. Regular listeners of this thing know how much Mike is pleased by this. So that was the film. I want to thank everybody for coming. Thanks also to the sponsors whose logos we have here because we are professionals. Steelite International, on whose plates a lot of your food was. Siv Smith, which has me talking how I'm talking now. Event Factor, responsible for these screens, and our two new friends over at the mixer, making me look like I know how to set up cables and things. And Aquapana, San Pellegrino, Nestle Premium Waters, all of that stuff. If your things were fizzy, it was because of them. So I think that an appropriate way to lead into this would be with quotes that we have cited many times with one of our guests. From his episode of the podcast, Ricardo Paullosa, in his signature vest over there. There it is. Look at all those pockets. If you need things stored, he's your man. I know he doesn't listen to the podcast because he's the only person here paying with paper currency, but we very often reference his episode of the podcast, especially when he gave, I don't think simultaneously, one right after the other, but two definitions of art or two qualities of art that came to my mind when I saw this for the first time. And one of them, and when I saw this and when I saw the menu, which I think one of them is especially relevant, one of them was that it's a reflection on emotion and ideas. And the other was that it's a conversation with your tradition, right? When I stepped out with Mike to sort of huddle a little bit, he mentioned, a lot of this stuff is very 1985. But that's part of that dialogue, right? You're having a dialogue with the tradition of people who've done this before you. Norman, of course, is one of those people who did this before you and under whom you learned to do the things. So with that, I'm going to turn on the other microphone and hope for the best here. Oh, you guys will talk a little bit. There's not really much of a timer, but when we shift to Q&A, I'm going to ask you to share one, and I'll pass the other around.
No way.
Love that. Love that.
Let's make sure we're sharing his and you keep using yours.
Yeah, no one wants me with a microphone at all. Ever. Woo! Man, I came out at the tail end of that, and the last 25 minutes were intense.
I wish you would have been there for the first 25 years.
Yeah, I bet. I bet.
Because if you think that was intense, that young man was the definition of intense, which this film, which I was very wary about being made, demonstrates. And I'm very pleased that the director, Rebecca Halpern, and the producer, Renee Frigo, and the Trotter family gave me the permission to, not just permission, but volition to be there and to open up the way that I probably was afraid to open up to, because when people said, we're going to make a movie about Charlie Trotter, I'm like, you're going to slaughter my brother and you're going to ask me to participate, which didn't really turn me on. But I made sure that Charlie's mother, first and foremost, and then Charlie's sister Anne, who both appear in the film, no, they said no. We endorse this. So and it's not apparent in the film, but this all took place from a very, very tough filmmaking time period during the pandemic. So Rebecca Halpern, who the primary person because she's director, she had tools taken away from her that many directors, of course, have, which is the ability to get on a plane, go places, interview people, do all this stuff that you would anticipate being part of a documentary. That was not the case. But fortunately, and this has a lot to do with things like Mr. Trotter, Charlie's father's, the 8mm films that go back to the beginning, that was there. And then Charlie's avalanche of postcards, primarily, and letters, that was there. So it gave a great opportunity from a storytelling standpoint to make this film remarkable. Don't you agree? It is, it's a trip for me to see this movie again. And I'm so grateful, Michael, that you and your team have done this here in Miami. I have been able to, the first time I saw it was at the producer's house. And they wanted me to get on a FaceTime call right after it was done with the director in Los Angeles and with Ray Harris, the guy who put up the primary financial, and asked me if I would respond to the movie almost in the moment. And I was like, fuck you. Fortunately, Renee had a pretty good-sized backyard, and I went for a walk, because I just was devastated, not because of the film, but because of the memories and the emotions of it. But now I've seen it doing great events like this, although this one's particularly great. In Nova Scotia, and Chicago, and Orlando, and Miami, and who knows where else we'll do one. Actually, there's other dockets on the book, and people chefs like Scott Crawford and Matt Bolas are talking. We're planning on one. But I met Charlie when Charlie was like 21. Charlie had just graduated from the University of Wisconsin-Madison, and he came to the restaurant where I was not qualified to be the chef of, and came into the kitchen and asked me for a job. And I said, well, we don't really need anybody right now, and aren't you a busboy? And don't you think you have other things to do? And he was like, in his mind, he was like, I'll be back tomorrow. And he came back tomorrow, and the next day, and you saw Carrie, who was astonishing. Carrie was my sous chef. She should have been chef. I should have been sous chef because she was more talented than me. But somehow my horoscope worked out better for the owner of the restaurant. This was the 80s, folks. And Charlie, he was remarkable. But when you first meet people and you first start working with them, I don't think you have the capacity to realize the arc that they could be on. This movie helps us realize that there are people in our midst that could be on an arc like you are, that is going to redefine the nature of the business, the nature of the artistry of this business. Charlie and I connected not only in cuisine ways, but also music and literature and heroes. We had heroes like Henry Miller and Bukowski and people you might not expect Charlie to have as heroes. Charlie had heroes like the chefs like Girardet. I had lunch at Girardet's home with Charlie. Charlie led me to so many experiences that I will be eternally grateful and transformed by. If it were not for Charlie, I would never have been able to have been in the places that I got to. He became the door and the road in many ways for me to move past my Key West hippie self, my Miami. Here I am way down here in the South. I'm not in New York. I'm not in Chicago. He brought the larger world to me, and he never, ever forgot the beginning. And so when he would do one of those astonishing dinners, and he did so many, and he brought chefs from all over the world, I was brought in too. And so I got to interact with Alain Ducasse and Roger Verger, and you name it. People I would never have met had it not been for Charlie. Does anybody want to talk next?
I have a microphone. I think when I watched the documentary, one of the things there's a lot of that, how much did Charlie impact people just in Chicago? But I think how much Charlie impacted people all over the country. They didn't really talk about a ton, but for me, it's something that, Charlie impacts my food even today. When I look at his work, and I've studied his work a ton, the things that Charlie did a long time ago, people still can't wrap their mind around today. And I think that's one of those things that, his food and the impact that he had with food is going to be felt for a very long time. And not just that, the people that worked under him have gone to, levels that, it's obviously pretty impressive, just like yourself. And I think the bond that you guys had is something that I always admired from afar, because I started working for you when I was very young. So I got it, I get it. I understand. Younger. But the camaraderie that you guys had, the connection that you guys had is a lot of community that I've always aspired to have. And I think the impact goes farther than just food. It goes to community. It's working with other people. It's how do you drive other people around you, and not just to be better chefs, but to be better people. And, again, I arrived at the tail end when it was changing, but I think that his career and the impact he had on so many other careers is felt just much farther than food. And I know I feel it now, and it's a lot of times like this dinner was something that we actually had every chef in the whole company from all 5 of the restaurants work on this menu, because it was something that I was like, I just don't want to fuck this up, because the food it's not just like, we're not just putting food together. We're trying to do food that hopefully Charlie would be proud of.
Charlie would be very proud. I was so impressed with so much of it. And then in the middle of the second course with the salmon terrine, I'm like, I didn't want to, be one of those people on my phone in the middle of this, but I wanted to text you and say, Charlie would love this terrine, man. This is so killer.
That's good. We just followed the recipe. We just followed the recipe. I won't take credit for, we literally just followed the recipe. And it's like that with so much of his flavor combos and the things that he did. And I think that the impact of the food and the whole community that he started is going to be felt for a very long time. So,
Charlie united so many people. I mean, I would not have met Emerald had it not been for Charlie. Charlie went to New Orleans for an event, I guess, with Emerald or something, and Charlie and I were already, super tight, and he came back from that event, and he says, "You have got to meet Emerald. You guys are going to be like so close. You're going to be so tight. You're going to love this guy. He's going to love you. Boom. It's got to happen." And it was just after that I was invited to come down to Santa Fe to do this symposia on American cuisine. Charlie was invited. Emerald was invited. I had not met Emerald up to that point. And so this is early. This is 89. And Emerald had just opened up Emerald's. He'd been at Commander's Palace. And so we all converge on Santa Fe. And we were asked, the three of us plus two more chefs from other parts of the United States were asked to speak about why we cooked the way we cooked. What was the inspiration for us to cook the various ways that we did? Now, if you would have dropped a bomb on this building that morning, you would have killed half of all the restaurateurs in America, I think. It was a hugely important group of people. Ella Brennan was there, Gordon Sinclair was there, you name them, they were there. Daniel Ballou was there. I was on stage with Charlie, Emerald, Lydia Shire from Boston, Tom Douglas from Seattle, and us three. And and the night before, we were all in the bar of this hotel, and Charlie's like, "You got to meet Emerald." So I'm like, he takes me over, and Emerald's standing there. Hadn't met him. Remember, this is long before the Food Network was anything, and Emerald's like holding a glass of bourbon or scotch or something, and the ice cubes are shaking around like crazy. He goes, Emerald's not from New Orleans. He's from Fall River, Massachusetts, and his accent is a little different. He goes, Norm. Nobody calls me Norm, but he does, and so I don't care. And he goes, Norm, you gonna make the speech tomorrow? I'm like, well, we have to, don't we? He goes, are you gonna make a speech? I'm like, well, I guess so. I mean, that was the whole deal, right? He goes, oh, I don't like to talk in front of people. Emerald. This is how the infancy we were all in was. I mean, we're blessed, Mike, to have been a part of the American food world as it came of age in what was called New American Cuisine. The magazines were just starting to write about food in ways that were not French. They were starting to write about the geographical pull of restaurants in America. Alice Waters, Paul Prudhomme, Barry Wine, a person most people may not even know that name anymore, but he was instrumental. Larry Forgione, people like that. Jeremiah Tower, one of my great heroes. Patrick O'Connell still doing it, right? And we, one of the things that was so important about doing this movie to Ray Harris, the guy that put up the money, the guy from Morgan Stanley, the guy that didn't die in 9/11 because he was on a plane coming back from France, said we can't forget about Charlie. Can't forget about not only Charlie, but the whole entirety of what American cuisine evolved to. I know Charlie in some of the scenes, if he was watching the movie, he would die. The plates, he'd be like, oh, that's not the way my food looks anymore. He would, like when he was slicing the ostrich or something, it was like, oh, I know Charlie would just be so upset because that was his perfectionism. He just never changed. A lot is made in the movie about Charlie being a tyrant. I just can't square that in my mind. I just can't. I met Charlie. So what?
Such
He was a perfectionist for sure. He wasn't a tyrant. He wasn't a dick for being the sake of being a dick. I mean, he was so, he's so focused, so focused. I mean, anyway, Charlie and I mean, at the end, we were, some of us, trying to get him to go back to being Chuck. We wanted him to stop being a victim of his own pressure. I said to him oftentimes, I was working at Chuyo, where I met a young man named, well, I didn't meet you, it was after that, but the second place you came to work with me. And I was walking in that hallway outside on the phone with Charlie and going, Charlie, why don't we just go back to the Keys and just open up a place with a jukebox and a pool table and have some fun, before it's all over. He was like, yeah, I got to do that. And then he'd send me videos like W.C. Fields or some terrible band from the 90s or something.
I mean, but a victim of your own pressure is probably the chef's biggest crutch. So many.
For sure.
I mean, so many that if it's always said, if you want to be great, you have to be your biggest critic, you yourself. I mean, I take criticism from so many, but there's nobody more critical on me than me. And it's hard, and we've all felt it. I mean, we all feel it all the time. It's like so many people, and I mean, Trotter's was what Trotter was for 25 years, right? It made it to 25 years for a restaurant. That's crazy. Today is actually Ariete's 7th birthday. To be 7, I feel like it's nuts. And to reach 25, I mean, so many people have critiqued you in that time frame. So many people have, but at the same time, with so many critiques, so many people were like, man, you're doing great. And at the same time, you walk away like, that guy's full of shit. It happens all the time. Like, man, you're doing awesome. I'm like, but I could do better. But you did this thing. It's like, yeah, but it's not enough.
And I think Charlie's heroes, Miles Davis, Coltrane, Dylan, I mean, who was harder on themselves than those folks? And that was pure essence of Charlie. In America, though, I think we need to come to terms with realizing that we should not be always looking for the next hottest, newest, whatever, trendy, whatever thing that there is. I think we need to revere restaurants that are neighborhood restaurants, that are humanistic restaurants. I mean, because what happens to these people? I mean, Grant. When I heard Grant was going to be in the movie at first, I was like, why? I mean, those guys were like, but I've got to say, I think having Grant in that movie provides a pivotal opportunity to explore the dichotomy between those two things. I mean, Grant, God bless him for saying what he said. That's, he sees himself in that that he could be that person. Don't worry, he will be that person. And it's tough. It's tough. I hope to God, that you are going to watch this movie and go, give yourself a little bit of breathing room now. Because what happens? Are you going to throw yourself on a sword? If they don't get 3 Michelin stars, are you going to hate yourself? Are you going to stop wanting to cook? Are you going to lose your passion? Give me like that fool in the menu.
I still haven't seen that movie.
Yeah, I know. Have you all seen the movie?
So good.
How many? Raise hands. How many people have seen the movie The Menu? Not a lot. Not a lot. Well, it's a satire. It's a satire, and it's. I think I wanted to walk out of that movie after about the first 10 minutes. I thought, I don't need this shit. It's Sunday. And then it turned a corner for me as satire, good art will, and I'm not saying it's the greatest movie I ever saw, but it's pretty damn good.
It's a lot of fun.
By what?
I've seen them, but I have not seen them.
So, Nick, you think it's time for Q&A or no? You think so?
Yeah.
All right.
You want mine? Okay. Can I order a drink before I give you the mic? What do you order?
Mozzarella sticks for everything.
Are there any questions out there?
Any answers?
Oh, Miguel, come on. Miguel over here. Miguel had the hottest steak all day.
Oh yeah.
If you guys don't follow
You knew
Miguel
it was coming.
Masans on Instagram, follow me. He had the best steak I've seen all week.
We won't talk about that right now.
I can read it.
But I've had a couple of drinks already, so I'm a little looser than the two of you guys, and I may,
Perfect.
just talk for a couple more minutes. For those of you that don't know, I actually got the opportunity to work for Chef Norman as a chef de cuisine a number of years ago. And when
Is
Mike
opportunity the right word, though?
opportunity or blessing or I don't know. There's many beautiful adjectives I could give to that experience. And a couple of bad ones too, but we won't talk about those. Nothing to do with you though.
Shout out to Steve Smith Gin.
Smith does their job, apparently.
But
Nice work, guys, in the back. Love that.
I remember when I first interviewed for Chef Norman. It's probably like 2017 or something. I don't remember. But we sat in a room and he asked me, tell me about yourself as a chef. What was your story? And hearing Chef Mike at the beginning of the movie, that he was talking about the books, Charlie's books, and it reminded me of my own experience and why I chose to become a chef. And actually, Charlie is a part of that. I'm a product of Miami. I was born and raised here, and Miami is very much a city where the flash and the trend is given priority, right, for restaurants. So growing up, I had no idea about seasonality. I had no idea, that the food was what made restaurants a restaurant. And it wasn't until in my early 20s, I was studying hospitality at FIU. I did an internship, and on my day off, and I was working at a hotel in a Marriott, suit and tie, the whole thing. And I had this grandiose vision of myself, opening up a Copacabana or something crazy like that, right? Crazy lights and a stage, and there's gonna be dancers and Cuban food and salsa music and all these things. And I go on Google and I research what are the best restaurants in the world. This is like 2008 or 2009 or something. And much to my surprise, I find this huge list. Pellegrino had just been starting at that time, and Michelin Guide was starting to make a couple of waves in America. And I had never heard of any of these things. And one of the names that popped out was Charlie Trotter. And I said, who the heck is this guy, right? I've never heard of a chef, and I find name after name: Chef Charlie Trotter, Heston Blumenthal, Norman Van Aken, Thomas Keller, Eric Ripper, and this whole list of guys and girls. And I'm like, who are these people? And why is everything about the food and nothing is about the flash, right? And then all of a sudden a spark came upon my head, and I said, maybe I should start to look at the food. And I really swear to you, that was the day that I probably decided to start looking down the path to become a chef. And Charlie Trotter's name was in that Google search. So fast forward a bunch of years, I buy Charlie's books, Lessons in Excellence, and all these things, lessons in wine service. I go to New York, and I was a busboy, much like Charlie, working at Restaurant Danielle. And I walk up to the chef and I said, I want to be a cook. And he said, you're crazy. He's like, look where you are. This is a 3-star Michelin restaurant. I have a stack of resumes. Why the heck do you want to come in here? And I said, I want to learn how to cook. And I remember telling this story to Chef Norman in my interview. And you and Jeffrey were looking at each other, just giggling. And I had no idea about the backstory of Charlie being a busboy, coming up to you, and before I was even born, and saying that he wanted to cook.
Well, now, wait a minute.
Race, from Race.
Yeah, maybe I was a few years old.
Maybe you weren't reborn.
Maybe, yeah, exactly. Maybe I was, and I was thought of at that time. But it was such an amazing experience. Many years later, after I decided to start cooking and things like that, I actually had the opportunity to go dine at Charlie Trotter's restaurant. This was circa 2011, and one of my best friends, who I hope to introduce you one day, chef, but Mike wasn't very well, Jonathan Cano. He right now runs a two Michelin star restaurant in DC, and Gano's and my friendship is very much like you and Charlie. Jonathan was this young guy in Miami, who I kind of pushed to break out of his shell, and now he runs a two Michelin star restaurant, Ariete all these things in DC. And the first experience that Jonathan and I had dining together, the first Michelin star dinner that Jonathan ever had, was at Charlie Trotter's when I took him to dinner there in 2011. I'll never forget that night, and neither will he. And it's just the two of us sitting there. And this now goes to much more the Charlie thing. I remember Charlie walking around the room, and I remember talking to Jonathan and saying, "We're gonna order a Chateau Lafite." That's a big heavy wine, especially for some 20-year-old kids to be ordering. A Chateau Lafite is like $500-600 a bottle for a half bottle, right? But I remember reading in Charlie's wine books and this again goes to the prowess of Charlie as a chef. He would alter the menu according to your wine, and I didn't believe it. Right? I read it in the book, and I'm like, there's just no way this guy does this, right? You got to be a freak of nature to be able to do small changes in the menu, the acid, the butter, the oil, the whatever, the salt, to accommodate your wine. It's almost like if he had a reverence for the wine. And I said, I'm going to test this guy out. We're going to order the Chateau Lafite. And Jonathan's like, all right, let's do it. So we order Chateau Lafite. The bottle comes out. 1995, something or other, Bordeaux. And I swear to you, from the moment that they opened that wine until we took the last sip, every course had a different flavor of the wine. It brought out something else. And we were blown away. And I can't believe that they did this, right? I'm like, is this just me getting drunk on the wine? Or is this guy actually altering the menu to fit the wine, right? Fast forward a few more years later, I'm working at, and I'll end here because I'll probably take up too much time, but I'm working at Time Out Market, and it's the first night that I ever have my own quote-unquote restaurant of my own, right? It was a pop-up, but whatever. It's my first thing, my first solo venture. And it's the friends and family night, and Chef Norman and Chef Mike both had spots in the market. And Chef Norman walks over with a gentleman, a short-statured man. And I'm like, who is this? And he goes, Chef Miguel, I'd like to introduce you to Larry Stone. And my jaw dropped, because Larry Stone was the sommelier in the movie, right? So it came full circle for me, and I really thank you, Chef, for that experience, because, I remember maybe 8-10 years before, dining at the restaurant, ordering the Chateau Lafite wine, reading the guy's book about wine service and excellence and all these things, and all of a sudden, Larry Stone comes to my table and he says, well, what do you have to eat? And I got to cook this man a meal. So for me, it was a very cool moment. I appreciate that, and I don't know if anyone else in here is a chef. I'm assuming there's one or two maybe hospitality people in the room. Maybe. But if you don't know Charlie Trotter, or if this is your first kind of expose to Charlie or to Chef Norman, they really did an impact. And this is just one small story, for me, there's thousands of other cooks around the United States or the world that were impacted by this guy. And by their legacy, by his legacy, and the changes that he did. You know, it's incredible. So, you know, thank you everyone for being here. Chef Mike and Chef Norman, thank you for taking the time to do this. You know, Nick, I almost called you Chef Nick. Supposedly this guy makes a great omelet. But anyways, I'll give the mic back.
He's not wrong.
So it's not really a question, but it was just more of a, you know, a story I wanted to share. Hopefully add a little bit of value to the evening by doing that.
Thank you.
First, he's not wrong about the omelet. It's pretty good. You haven't even had it. You said
It's a nice one.
Yeah, I mean, there might not be that. Also, since you mentioned, I don't know who else here is in hospitality. I'm not going to shout out everybody who's in hospitality, but when we did our second live dinner at Maxwell Brothers, we had one person come in from Connecticut for that absolute shit show of a podcast that we did. There were actual t-shirt cannons involved, and she brought a Pez dispenser, because apparently that's where Pez dispensers were invented.
It was a disaster.
Nobody here came in from that far. However, the Orlando contingent collectively, I think, has beat her out on miles traveled to get to a podcast. So I want to thank Tom over there with his family, one of Norman's partners, and also the Soseki crew over here. This is tremendous. This is, again, among the things that blow our minds continuously.
You have nothing better to do on a Sunday.
Here, your name's on the sandwich.
Oh, you're gonna give it back to me?
Yeah.
I mean, are there any other questions?
Michael, how can you little Berlin guy lead the?
It's a shocker, right?
Columbus boys.
I'm shocked every time.
First of all, I'm from Miami. I went to Columbus a long time before you did.
But still.
Norman, you have great friends. Emerald, Charlie, I met them both. They're great guys. They volunteered. How many times they cook at the restaurant in Orlando? At least, Norm, I know I drank with Emerald till 3 in the morning, so I don't know with Charlie. So, but,
And Dean and a few
yeah,
others.
Dean we sang. That's a different story. Dean Fearing, that's a different story. I was very impressed with his first wife. I gotta be honest.
In the film, absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
I think when he lost her, where's Janet? Janet had to be close to her. Right? Were they very close?
Well, yes, for the short period of time that Charlie and Lisa were together. We were at the first wedding with Lisa and Charlie. I think, you know, we got to know Lisa better through this film than even in real life. She's, I think she provides a lot of syntax to this movie. It's really great. She provides so much. Yeah.
So the real question is, did you both have a go-to dish of each other's? That's the real
Charlie
question.
and me?
Yeah. Was there something of yours he loved, and was there something?
Charlie always, Tom, you're gonna like this. Charlie always wanted me to make either the conch chowder.
Are you shrimp?
No, ironically, the foie gras.
The Down Island.
The Down Island French toast, right. And, well, see, Charlie was loath to have anybody suggest that he would make any dish twice. But me and Emma would always love giving Charlie a little bit of a ribbon, because whenever we would go and do a big gala, whatever, together, and we had to cook for a whole lot of people, Charlie always made a terrine. Because he could make it in Chicago and ship it, and it was done, and then he could just like slice it at the end, and it was all set. Smart. Yeah.
Any oh, I want to shout out Noah for a moment. People who listen to the podcast, I think a lot of the Orlando people, you know, whenever we do our party recommendations or our shameless plugs and all the things music plays, Noah has made all of our all the things music. Nobody in this room
including Mike and me, has done more for this podcast than Norm.
That's correct.
It's a pleasure to be able to contribute any way I can. You know, a small thing that I noticed in the documentary was the use of photography in Charlie's cookbooks, and I think over the years, photography, obviously, I'm a terrible food photographer. I try all the time, but it doesn't work. But one of the things I noticed is that obviously, you know, you eat with your eyes, and pretty food looks appetizing. And over the years, Norman, with your cookbooks, and I know Ariete Hospitality Group, you know, uses photography in so many different ways. Can you talk about photography and how that has become part of your craft?
You said sure, now you're gonna turn to me.
Yeah. You're the one with cookbooks, not me.
Oh, okay. Well, I need to back up a half of a microsecond before we move completely off the chowder. I have to say thank you to Ricardo Payoso, who wrote an entire poem on the conch chowder.
Can we, later on in the Q&A, could we get Ricardo to read that poem? I'm sure I can find it.
Well, I don't have it on me, but...
No, I'll have it. I know you're a paper currency guy, but I'll find that on my phone.
I asked Michael to have a tattoo made of that poem on his arm, and so far he's rejected me. So, the photography. Charlie, like always, was extraordinarily generous, and a person who does not get credit in this film, and he should, is Tim Turner, who was the photographer for 98% of everything that Charlie ever published. Tim Turner, most humble guy, amazing. He doesn't even use his own name on Instagram. It's like Blue Cooks or something. I don't even know why. I mean, but Tim was there from the first cookbook and through everything pretty much. Sometimes Charlie would say, well, Tim's great at food, but I want other people to do the people shots. But Tim was, like I say, he was the champion of Charlie's cookbooks. And I wish he was here so I could give him a shout out because he's such a gracious and lovely person. And then when Random House invited me and Janet to write the third or fourth book, Charlie goes, well, you got to use Tim. So we did, and that was an experience because that was the first time I had anybody of that capacity to do my books photographically, and so yeah, we're living in another age. Back, when I first bought the cookbooks that were my. Stop smoking that shit, man.
Okay, all right.
If I can't give him shit, nobody in this room can, right? I love you.
Yeah.
So anyway, the first books I ever got, like Wowed By, were published by Marl, William Marl Books. This is around 82, and it was the 3-Star Chefs of France. If they had 8 photos in their books, that was it, max. And so, but now we live in this age, it's another age, and it's a very visual age, the age of Instagram and TikTok, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so we are much more dependent and reliant and need to be fed by the images as much as by the ideas of the recipes.
I got thoughts here.
Yes.
So when I worked for Chef the second time was book 5. 4? I don't know.
6.
No.
5. So I didn't really understand. I had no fucking clue what it took to take pictures of food at all whatsoever. And then, he's doing this book, and then we have photo shoots for the book, and I'm like, this is wild. This takes it's a team of 4 people, and there's 7 dishes per photo, and it's like a lot of fluff. You don't know that some of this food is not edible, and it is edible, and it's like all this, and it's really was an experience. So I would say that, he's 1,000% right. We're living in a very different age now. I like the cookbooks that had 8 photos in them, because the recipes usually work a lot better than the ones today. And Like, but that prepared me in some way for the shit that we live today. Because like the stuff that we live today, I mean, we have to take photos. I mean, I have a team that takes photos of stuff all the time. And they work, like, you know, they're a 9-to-5 employee. And because of that experience, I'm able to give them better coaching because I was like, well, I saw it this time. I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. But like, I saw them do this, maybe that'll work. And it does the majority of the time.
We as chefs sometimes go, just put the phone down and eat the food. Just put the food down and eat the food. We're just like, oh my God, they're more wrapped up in that than the conversation with people, with their, interacting with the food. I don't want to say, oh, you must eat my art and shut up. No, that's the whole thing. Talk to each other and enjoy the food and maybe your granddaughter's there and you can have a few moments with her at the same time. But if you're always setting up the shot and always doing all that shit, you're just divorced from the actuality, and we've never had this before in our culture. Stop.
Yeah.
Enjoy.
These damn phones, today, they can do anything.
Well, I mean, I think we're living in a very interesting time.
Yeah.
And something that I talk about a lot exhaustingly in all of our restaurants is like, restaurants are one of the last places for a community to have a conversation. And that happens over food. And if you're having a great conversation, having a great experience, usually the phone and the whole thing and all that stuff is put away. And I don't remember who said it. Maybe you said it, maybe Nick said it, maybe Miguel said it, which is, everything is about like the glitz and the glamour and the smoke and mirrors and the bullshit. But like when you go back to like real true food, like what was that, Trotter's, and so many of these legendary like new American chefs and just really chefs all over the world, like none of that shit existed. What existed was real food and a real experience and a moment and a time that you'll never forget, like what you were talking about with Jonathan. And Jonathan also runs a 2-star and a 1-star, just saying. But, just to correct. But just like that moment and that experience, like you will remember for the rest of your life. And I've been fortunate enough to have so many of those experiences at restaurants with great food and great service and great hospitality and stuff that I'll fucking never forget. And, the photography, I think sometimes it does, divorcing yourself from the experience is a great way to put it, because you have forgotten what you're really there for, which is to experience a moment with someone else and have this like beautiful experience with it. So the world is changing.
I think we're agreeing that to be in the restaurant business, to be in the hospitality business, is the greatest thing I could imagine as a place to go to work. And I've been in this business as a cook for 50 years, 50. And you know what I'm doing next month? I'm opening up a new restaurant. Nick, you're so on it. Yeah. I mean,
I'm a few beats off.
And loving people say to me, why do you want to keep doing that? And I'm like, well, because I just still like making plates.
Yeah.
I still like making flavors. I still like working with teams. And so I'm so grateful that I get to continue doing this, and I'm doing it with my friend and my partner Tom Wood right over there, and Courtney's mother, and the family, the Wood family, and Janet. And of course I'm going to make sure that both Michael and Miguel and a few others in this room come and do dinners with me, because I love sharing that time and space with you all.
Well, I think are we winding down?
I think we can.
Are there any questions left?
Yeah, are there any other
Are there
questions?
any answers left?
If there are no questions, I think
Do we want to end on putting Ricardo on the spot and asking him to read?
I have a couple of thoughts before, because Ricardo looks like, man, he looks angry at me. Are you mad at me? No? Okay. Is that Ricardo? Yeah.
It's the shit.
Yeah. He's doing his job. Nice work. I think my thoughts before we hand it over to someone that's much more well-spoken than I am. No, definitely not Nick. Some of the things like I took away from that, and I think this really matters, which was that, you know, you put the most pressure on yourself when it talks about winning awards or what those awards mean, and you know how they hang over your head, and it's this gigantic chip on your shoulder, and the pressure you put on yourself to get there, the pressure you put on your team. I put a lot of pressure on myself. And I think a lot of us in here that are hospitality people do as well. Because I feel like, you know, winning a Michelin star for us was amazing. But at the end of the day, when I look in the mirror, I don't do it for awards, and I never did, and I never wanted to. I did something because I wanted to change the perspective on what a certain type of cuisine was looked at. And the end result was an award. The pressure of that award after the fact has not changed the way that I look at my food and I look at my people and I look at my business. And I would never look at someone across the table and say, you are my enemy. And I think that everyone in the community should be that way. And I'm not saying to be like me. I'm just saying to understand that we're all part of a community that's trying to make food and beverage and hospitality and the community of all those things better. And I think when we look at it as a competition, like it's me versus you, we have already failed, and we're giving them what they want. Because if you look at the end of this documentary, they painted a picture of someone that was evil, and then they said that he was great, when he really was great the whole time. They will always paint a picture of what they want you to think that you are, but you will always know who you are at the end of the day. No matter what award you have, no matter what thing you've won, how many times you've been nominated for a beard, how many times you fucking lost, it doesn't matter. And I think that Miami is this incredible melting pot of food. It's this incredible melting pot of culture. We have these mavericks, trailblazers, people that set the road for us, like Chef Norman and other people like him. And we're just fortunate to be here and to continue doing that thing for our fellows in Orlando and people all over the country. Like, don't get lost in the sauce, is what I'm trying to say. Don't get lost in the sauce. Like, you know, I'm blessed every day to have friends like Chef Norman, friends like you guys, Miguel, Brenda, Noah, all you guys. It's just, like, this is what it's all about. And I think, you know, I came out after putting out the entree and came out at that one point, and it really struck me. And I was like, man, like, they are painting a picture of enemies when really we are all family. And we all want the same thing for each other. And I mean, I can't tell you how blessed I am to have a friend like Norman and so many people in this room that everyone is just doing their thing and trying to push this whole thing forward. And that's what it's really all about. So now I'm ready to give Ricardo the mic.
Ricardo, come on. He wasn't told that this was going to be happening, but I'm going to ask you to come up. Get up and come. Yeah, you come up this way. I know he's not happy.
He doesn't want to.
He's not happy, but that's okay.
Well, he went to Beltran.
Typical Belen behavior.
All right.
So I think this is
have my seat?
Yeah, let him have it.
Yeah.
Unless it's not too. Yeah, we gotta get rid of this guy.
Sounds like a sentence.
So I'll let Ricardo and Norman provide a little context, but we're gonna have him read that poem about the conch chowder.
I don't have the poem.
I have it.
Oh.
Welcome to the future.
You mean on that little box?
On this little box. This is what's happening now.
You're gonna read?
So I think this is a good note to end on, because I think it's a good example of, you know, an illustration of the kind of thing that the work of a person like Norman, maybe a person like some of the other chefs in the room, maybe a person like Mike, can inspire in somebody who is not cooking.
Wow, talk about being put on the spot here.
And actually, I'm sorry, just to provide a little bit of, because I want people to understand how fortunate we are to be, in this kind of situation. So Ricardo was a guest on the podcast, for those who don't listen. I'll read the bit from your bio that we put in the text. No, it's happening. Deal with it. Ricardo became a friend of mine when we met through the Beltran Alumni Association because he learned that I was working at Cigar Snob magazine. And after this first meeting of Entertainment, Arts, and Media section of the Alumni Association, he came to me and he said, "Can I have some?" And so we've been sharing cigars since.
I've been leeching.
Right. His first book of poetry, Sorting Metaphors, won the first National Anhinga Prize. He published a second book of poetry in Bread of the Imagined. His third book of poems, Cuba, was nominated for the Pulitzer Prize. And his latest collections are Mastery Impulse and Parable Hunter, both from Carnegie Mellon. I don't know if that needs updating.
A lot, yeah.
A lot of it. I know. You didn't want to read it, now you want to read it.
What happened here? Okay.
There
The magic box. Some years ago, I forgot what year it was when we first met.
I don't know, but I know you were sitting at table 13.
Yes, I was at that table. There was a program that was set up for chefs to coordinate with poets to come in, and I guess it was like a discreet way of feeding a starving poet. You come in, you taste these wonderful dishes, and then you would write a poem or two or three about them, and they would be included in the menu for April, which is National Poetry Month. And Norman here did me the great honor of picking me out to be the poet for his marvelous dishes. And I was astounded. I said, there must be some mistake. And at the time, Jennifer, was it Jennifer? Or was it Jen? What? No, Jennifer at New Times or whatever. She was one of those. Yeah, Jen. And she was, no, he actually asked for you. I go, wow, okay, very good. So this was one of the poems, which I haven't read in a million years. So it's creamy cracked conch chowder with saffron toasted coconut, star anise, oranges at Norman's, Coral Gables. Sweet. From the bowl's edge balcony, skirted by parsley, a lip of flayed orange, fourth of a kiss. Half a bilabial stop, partner and stammer, pretends to be the author of its poise, though given away by the resonations of kin, sent into boil to find self and joy. And what it finds is a way to melt while keeping the code without which there is no name. What it finds as well is the breast of context. What a skin is echo, the stage prop and the cypress by the road, the tasseled lamp and the crumpled pillow are our ingredient language, transferences that compass, leap the merits of being singular. The orange on its pearl white rim, knowing itself a portion, but searching the anise fragrances and the toasted coconut arcs, probing the supple panko-breaded conch strands, and the shellfish stock for its originating sign will do more than seek comfort in finding itself in this ochre chorus, the faded gold of that honey which flesh aspires to. Sieve the light from the flame, and you will see this mirror, though not its orange task, cheap survival. The fragment's joy is the builder's fate.
Wow.
that remind us that the artist is freedom, but it isn't just freedom. The artist is freedom turned into work. And I salute the chefs because it is a great art which has not been given the same aplomb as the arts of sight and hearing, the poems and the symphonies and the paintings. But it is a very intimate and powerful thing to create a dish because it reminds the body that it doesn't have to think about immortal things. It can just taste them. Thank you.
I think with that, this is where we very abruptly and gracelessly end the thing. I'll note on one of the high tops outside, I wish I had done this with the other 3 dinners and I finally thought to do it. I have extra menus and Sharpies. So if people want to sign, this is not for you, this is for me. This is for me and Mike, and if somebody goes crazy and signs like 15 menus, then I guess you can all fight over it. But I want a menu, Mike can have a menu, mine comes first. And we'll figure all that out. But this was a very haphazard thing. Thank you all for coming. Thank you, Norman. Thank you, Christina. The Orlando people, this has been great. Thank you. That's it. That's all I got. That's it. Let's take it up. Torrance is still open.